another episode of the Surfcast Podcast. We will be doing this week another installment of our Lessons from the Log, where Jerry and I take a look back at some of the recent fishing that we've done and see if we find any patterns or interesting tips or just something positive that can be pulled from it, whether for us or for hopefully listeners out there, more than just us talking about what we did and what worked for us. Hopefully you could take some of this, take some positives out of it, and add it into your fishing this fall, next fall, and going forward. So we're going to hop right into things this week. We're not going to dilly-dally and delay. We'll jump right in, and I'm going to get going, started off, because honestly, my last couple of weeks, I didn't fish a whole lot.
Okay.
Unfortunately. But, yeah, I used to fish a ton in October. It was my big month. I loved it, looked forward to it. But now it seems, as I'll get into, it doesn't seem like October. If nothing else, I'm not getting out as often as I'd like. I am away for a week every October for work, so that takes one of the weeks off the table. But even outside of that, it was a little difficult to get out this month. But it was too bad because honestly, the month of October, that first week coming out of September, coming off of last Lessons from the Log, I was on a good bite of fish. Things were going well. I had some high hopes. I was looking at, the fall run is on. The fall run is positive. Had bait. Was seeing silver sides, which still it's bait, but in numbers that I hadn't seen throughout the season yet, in spots that they're generally there. And this one spot that I was on in particular, there's some sort of correlation. Even though those silver sides are up in the wash, they're big, there's lots of them, and there's fish, 50 yards out where you're not seeing any sort of bait, whether there's just some connection there, which I don't think those fish, I'm not casting the fish, I think, that are feeding on those silver sides, but when they're there, they're usually out there. It's something I haven't fully deciphered just yet.
Probably something intermediary in there. In between.
I've thought that, like when there's big fish on this bite, like that's one of the first times I started getting in my mind years ago of like maybe the big fish are feeding on the small, the big stripers are feeding on the small stripers that are feeding on the small bait.
I wasn't even thinking smaller. I wasn't even thinking striper to striper, but I was thinking there's something else in there. Anyways, it's a lot of life attracts life. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah. There was a time when we had when there were small blues in this area. Like, it was funny. I would actually run into bluefish, like, on my rock that I fish. If I'd pitch an eel behind me, boom, like a little bluefish would chop the crap out of that thing. Like 1-2 pounders. But then when I'd cast out to the deeper water with that eel, which is what I was fishing a lot of that time frame, it was all big stripers. So that was another thing. Like, I've seen at this spot in the daytime big stripers feeding on harbor blues, which is crazy to see that. So there was another piece of what might have been going on. But this year, I didn't see that. I didn't see those little blues around, but had some good fishing. Predictable. It was kind of a pleasant surprise of like fish at the tide stage where they should be, where you wanted them to be, where you were kind of like, all right, tonight they're gonna be here. They were here last night. We had them, and then I was on the bite a couple days, and I went down to the spot again, and they were just gone. Like, there was no obvious change. There was no big wind event. Like last year, we had something kind of like this, like some of the best fishing of the season go on. And then that big weather event kicked in where it was like in a week we had, was it 2 nor'easters or something? I forget off the top of my head exactly now, but 2 big weather events, and it also coincided, lucky you guys that are watching and listening here from Long Island, New Jersey, it like sparked that bite, like that crazy fall y'all had last year. I think it kind of came of our fish pushing across to you. But this year I didn't have that. It just weren't there, which then got back into like how the season was going up until then. But, nonetheless, I got out a couple of times, then had my week away, and when I came back, I just kind of, I said, there hasn't been much patterning going on. I had a couple of places that looked good, and I just said, I got a gut feeling I'm going to go to this place tonight. And I went, and I actually had fish. Hey, fall run, maybe it was a little wave that I hit, and, I was in the lull, and now I'm back on the top, and unfortunately that was a one-night bite that occurred before it, too, disappeared for no good reason. But it got me thinking about the month of October. Like, start off, I said October used to be like a highlight. I looked forward to it. It was the thing, and it's almost kind of like the way the bite's developing. At least the last 3 seasons now is like the October is the old November for me.
That's
in
right.
southern New England.
That's right.
It's like the quick hits. Those fish are on the move. Just because there's bait there doesn't mean there's gonna be fish, even though that obviously helps this time of year. But some nights there'll be no bait and there'll be fish because you just happen to be there when like that migrating school pops by. So I got to thinking that, but 2-3 nights before we're recording this, I was out on a boat black fishing, pushed the bite into the dark hours. We switched over to squid, and I'll say I was in Rhode Island waters. The water temp was 58 degrees still in November. There was a ton of bait. I mean, we jigged up squid, we jigged up mackerel, we had silver sides, peanut bunker, snapper blues, variety of miscellaneous stuff really close to the beach. So between the bait and the water temperature, it sort of reinvigorated my positivity coming into the end of at least the southern New England fall run that it's really not over. Maybe it is just I'm in between a little wave. And I mean, I was talking to a friend yesterday via text, and we were both pretty psyched of the potential for the next couple of weeks, barring any weather events. The water's there, the bait's there. There could be more of a run than, maybe I was thinking even a week ago.
Yeah, the problem is I'm hearing no good reports from anywhere points north. There's nothing, what I mean? And I don't want to interject yet because I've got feels, and I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, it's interesting. We have not talked this all out, as we often don't do prior to the podcast. So it's interesting hearing you say all of this because it parallels so similarly what I experienced as well. And if people don't know who are listening, this isn't clear so far. Toby and I rarely fish together. I mean, we don't fish together. We're not fishing partners, that kind of thing. We do fish together, but it's not very common. It's very uncommon, I would say.
Counted on one hand, probably, for an average season.
Exactly.
And still have a finger or two.
So when we say, when I say it's similar, we're really not overlapping. So, that's important for people to hear. We usually do this at the end, but I don't know why I want to ask it right now, but it's just in my mind. Mm-hmm. For those times that it was okay and you had some fish, what were your top 3 lures?
So above and beyond, if I've got 3, there was like one that was the lion's share, and then the other 2 that filled in the gaps.
Trickle
and then
down.
Some oddball miscellaneous, yeah. But that big time, the thing that I was joking with one guy when I'd give him heads up there was a bite. I said, you could probably only go down and fish this, and that was the Z-Man diesel minnow, the 6-inch.
Okay. Man, we're on a kick.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's something. I mean, granted, I've been fishing that thing a ton this year, so probably factors in as well. But
right.
Trying other stuff against it outproduced. But that was number 1, above and beyond, multiple spots, and then from there, the rest, the majority of the fish were the 12-inch sluggo, which I've been doing a lot on. That's become my search bait when things are iffy, thanks in no small part to your influence over the last couple of years with finally getting me to go give that thing a legit try.
Yep.
And then kind of a surprise lure that I played with late last year, a little early, and then kind of forgot about it, but then it's been producing again, is the Tsunami Tidal Pro Twitch bait. And I believe it's the 5-inch model. It's the largest one. They just came out with it late last season.
Yep, great plug.
And it produced a lot of fish. Very surprisingly, when it was just a happy surprise to pull that thing out and consistently catch on it when I found the fish.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm sure that plug's going to come up a lot more because I've also been fishing it, and I think it's a good plug. And who knows, maybe we'll even feature that in one of our gear upcomers because I feel like that's one that people need to know about or something like that. So stay tuned for more on that, right?
And maybe I'll even tell you all the little mod that I do to it, but we'll see.
Oh, interesting. And I know what you're talking about actually now. That's interesting. Yeah, I forgot you do that. Yeah.
Yeah, not just the rigging mod.
Not just the rigging. There's something extra. Yeah, that's funny. I forgot you do that.
Stay tuned. Maybe we'll tip you off to that. We'll see.
Well, Toby, I got to say, again, it makes me feel better, even though I generally feel bad about the month of October. It makes me feel better knowing that we had a similar experience. Because I was going to say something very similar. And again, we're going to be honest with you. I'm not going to like sugarcoat things necessarily. We don't necessarily lean into some of the really negative things because this is supposed to be a fun, entertaining thing. You know, I'm breaking the fourth wall down right now for the podcast, but October used to be, you know, maybe my third favorite month, let's say, or tied runner up, or, you know, something like that. You know, I love May and I love September. September, it's a toss up every year which one is better producer for me in terms of large and also numbers, like just both. But June and October are so important as well for me. Over the last 5 years, but really the last 4, every year in October has gotten worse, and it feels like November. You nailed it. I wouldn't have put it like that, but you're absolutely right in that the very beginning of October can still be very good, and there's lots of potential, and there's real reason to get out there and hammer it. But by the middle, it starts to feel like I don't even know what to do because nothing makes sense. You show up, the bait's there, the water temperature's still good. We say this every year, a lot of years anyways. Oh, the water's still 50 degrees. There's still fish in Maine. How many times do we hear those things? Never seen this much bait. Every year, I've never seen so much bait. And it's, you know what I mean? I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm saying I hear this.
We as a community.
We as a community. And then it doesn't happen because there's no fish. Behind coming down the pipeline, I feel that for my spots, the way I fish, the patterning of a spot, not the patterning of a bait school, you know, camping out on my patterns and my spots and fishing the way I fish, it has been proving a lot less productive. And that's gets to everything you said, is exactly what you said. And it makes me think about what I might do different next year and what I might have to sort of stomach or accept if I want to catch fish in October, both numbers, but especially size. And that's that I might have to sort of listen to the network a little bit more. I might have to leave my spots a little bit more and fish places that maybe are a little bit more popular. I have to deal with people or, you know, traditional hotspots maybe. I don't know. Again, I have a whole year to think about this. So this is all sort of off the top of my head over the last couple of days as I think about this. But it's really made me think about it. And it really, I have not seen a more clear sign of the decline than my Octobers. For me, that's been my biggest sign where the fish are so sporadic and they seem like they're gone. And I know like Long Island this year has had and is currently having a pretty good run. And I think New Jersey just kind of went off and stuff. I think that's because those are the fish now. There used to be fish and now there's the fish. There's used to be fish and people not watching, I'm like making big gesticulations with my arms. I'm like waving my arms around, meaning like the whole coast to Portland or even further to the Kennebec, there were fish spread out. And now it feels like there's the fish. And the fish went to Long Island and they just weren't in October. Now, that's me being really negative. It's the truth though. And I don't know what to do. And it's very depressing. And it's really a sign of the times. And it's the reason that we're going to have to speak up for the striper and all this stuff. Now, there's another very depressing thing that happens for me in October, Toby. And this is a depressing thing, and this is going to be a weird thing, and people don't like to talk about this kind of stuff. But for me in October, I have like a reckoning. Whether it's a good October or a bad October, it doesn't matter. Where I sit there and I stare at the ceiling, or I'm zoning out in the car when I'm driving or whatever, and I think about the mistakes I've made during the season, the things I've missed out on, things I didn't do enough of, all the things I'm going to miss in the wintertime or when I'm dead. And it really kind of gets to that point sometimes. I go way too far with it. But it's like, if I'm going to die in November, what am I going to miss the most that I didn't do in October? I don't play that game in August. I don't play that game in July. You should, at periodical times through your season, take a reckoning and say, okay, where am I at? What do I want to do different? What have I the mistakes? Do I need to reset? What have I had enough of? What have I not had enough of? But for me in October, it's right around the middle of the month. I always have this moment where it's like, oh God, what am I going to miss in February? Like, what have I not done that I should have done back in June? And there's no question for me as I rolled into October, coming off September, which we both agreed, especially in the context of the season, was pretty good. It wasn't good, but in the context of the season, it was good. This season. Fly fishing. I did not fly fish enough. I did not fly fish enough this year. That's for sure. Last year I didn't fly fish enough. I had a torn meniscus the whole season, and actually a lot of your stability when you're really muscling those big flies, you have to be stable. And late in the season, as it got really bad, I couldn't even do it. But this season, I said I was going to do it, and I didn't, because I spent so much time trying to produce 35, 45-pound fish that all of those other little things fell away. Fishing those little spots with the fly rod, going to this spot that doesn't produce 35-pound fish but can produce lots of 15 to 18-pound fish, and then that's really fun on the fly rod. I didn't do a lot of that stuff because I got hung up on, I want to catch those bigger fish because it's been so tough. I have to focus more and more time, and those things fall away, right? Mm-hmm. But then when you get to October and the season's going to end, I'm going, okay, but now I got to let that go, or I'm going to miss out on this too. So all that to say is that in the month of October, the majority of my trips were fly rod. And the frustrating thing that happened with that is that then I got absolutely screwed by the weatherman. And I know this happened with you too. So this was not a phenomenon of just me. There were multiple times, like 3 or 4 times or more, where I went out with anticipating a 5-knot wind or a certain direction, north, south, and they were completely wrong. Mm-hmm. So, like, the most memorable night, which is what I'm going to talk about really briefly, is that it was supposed to be a 6 to 8 knot wind. And that is not very strong. Like, that's a pretty weak wind. But with the fly rod, with the direction and the place I need to fish, that gets to be borderline of what I need to do, because I need to cast as far as I can. It's over the wrong shoulder. And so it gets really tricky casting even with a 6 or 8 knot wind. I showed up and it was a steady 15 and it was gusting into the 20s. Remember that night, Toby? I mean, you weren't with me, but you remember that night.
I think that was a night, and I had fish, but I had like no wind. Like, I had even less, if I remember this correctly, I had been out and I had like even less than what your prediction was, even though we were not anywhere near each other, but mine was wrong in a beneficial way.
Okay, so see, I don't even remember, because I know there was another night that we had another experience where we went out and the wind was supposed to be really strong, and you went fishing with someone, which I won't even say unless you want to say who it was, and then it was crazy for you guys.
That's a different, that was
a different
night. The one I'm
night.
thinking of was on the same night as you, because I remember, I think you had sent me a text saying like your report on it. And shortly after I had gone out, and then I came back to my truck a couple hours later, and I read it, and I'm like, well, hell.
Where the hell was he? The surface of the moon?
Exactly, because, God, we're far enough away where it's not the same weather by any means, but a lot of times it's similar enough. Even, if we're an hour and a half drive from each other, they're still not that drastic, where what you had was like another planet from what I had.
And it felt like I was another planet from what the forecast was supposed to be. But I'll tell you this. And this is a message for everyone out there. This gets to be the beauty for the striped bass and a respect for what we do and, love of it. I'm out there in my wetsuit. I have to do a deep wade. I got my stripping basket is up around my armpits, behind me, upside down to get out to this rock. I don't have to swim, but it's deep. I get out there. The wind is howling. I should definitely not be out there with a fly rod. I'm in my wetsuit. And I'm just fishing filled with rage. So it's like rage-filled fishing. I'm just so pissed off. So mad at what? Mother Nature, the weather guy? I don't know. But I'm just mad. The whole night I cast at the shore and over my shoulder, because I couldn't cast, regular out at the water because the wind would just push it right into the back of my head. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to give an in fish a little tiny, deceiver or clouser. I want to fish my game changer. Thank you to Jake Hardy. I want to fish my game changers. I want to fish these things because I know that that's what's productive. That's the right thing to do. I'm not going to give in. I muscled through it and I landed some fish. And they were not big. They were topped out. I don't even know if they topped out at 30 inches. So these were legitimately small fish. I was proud of myself because I didn't give in. And I said, I'm not going to, I'm out here to do the right thing. I want to fly fish. I'm going to regret at the end of the year. I'm not going to just go home. The season goes fast, and then you die, and you're dead, and at my deathbed, I don't want to have regrets. So I'm out there in my wetsuit, fly fishing. The thing is, I know I'm out there, and I'm like, the other thing is, Jerry's like, nobody else is doing this because you're insane. This is stupid. So there was that too. I had this moment of pride where I was like, well, I mean, at least I know I'm the only one out here in a wetsuit tonight with a fly rod, whipping these big flies. There's nobody else out. I can almost guarantee it, from friggin' Long Island to Maine. So, there was that. So it was fun because I pushed through. Mm-hmm. Now, on the flip side of that, another night I went out, and this is like, this is an aggregate. There's more than just these 2 nights, but I'm just using these as an example. Was supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be in Northeast, and it was supposed to be 10 to 15. And I said, I can't deal with it. I'm not going to go out there again. This is a totally different spot, but I'm not going to go out there again and battle it with my fly rod. I don't feel like it. The season's getting on. I'm tired. It doesn't feel like it's been producing. I've been to this spot with the spinning rod. It doesn't seem worth it. So, but I want to go fishing. I'm not going to not go fishing. So I bring out the spinning rod. I break out the plugs. I get there. The wind is literally 0. It's 0. 0. Not 3, not 6, 0. The whole walk, there's fish in the wash the entire way. They're everywhere. Bait, I get out to the spot. There's fish. It's a full blitz in the night. They're breaking. They're jumping. They're on the shore. I'm flipping sluggos underhand into the wash, and they're just on it instantly, and every fish is freaking so savage. They're just annihilating it. There's no fussiness, even though the water's clear, and I think the moon was bright, or it was at least partial. Mm-hmm. There's no fussiness because there's bait. They're just being crazy. And the whole time, I'm pissed off. Because I'm thinking, if I had brought my fly rod, this could have been one of the best nights of the whole season, because I'd fish in the high teens. So this could have been the best night of the whole season. Those are not big fish. I'm not trying to represent them as big fish at all. They're okay, fun fish that, especially when things aren't going so well. It's, it's fun. Mm-hmm. But on the fly rod, it could have been insane. And who knows, maybe with the fly rod, because it was small bait they were on, I could have done even better. And it would have been the best night of the season. And instead, it was it was so bittersweet. It was so bittersweet because the whole time I'm thinking like, okay, this is kind of fun. And like, I'm catching fish after fishing for a while. It's like cast after cast after cast. Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to avoid them because I'm trying to see, can I pick something else bigger with a different plug or a bigger plug or whatever. But the whole time I'm just going, if I just had my fly rod tonight, which was the whole point of this month, it would have been worth it. And I was so mad. And I left the fish after like 2 hours. I was like, I'm out of here. This is stupid. Mm-hmm. This is stupid. So those are definitely the standout things for me. And I'm glad I fly fished as much as I did. Unfortunately, most of the end of the month, I got completely knocked out because I got sick. And for 3 weeks, even now, my voice is still a little weak and I cough and stuff. People might see me looking down, pushing the mute so I can cough. So that really kind of sucked some of the fun out of the end of the month as well for me. The other final thing I want to say, this is not surf fishing, but just to add, insult to injury, I didn't get to trout fish at all. Because my small streams are so dry, there's no water. So in essence, what I'm saying is October was a big time bummer for me. And I'm really hoping that November is a turnaround, both in terms of late season striper fishing, but also I'm going to go to Florida, and maybe we'll discuss that, at a future time too. But I'm going to be in Florida for a while. So,
well, one thing on your outings, obviously you're fly fishing a bit, but gotta see, what were your 3 top producing plugs and/or I guess we can throw flies in there if you want to.
Yeah, I guess
mix.
I didn't even really think about it. So, I mean, if we're talking flies, then there's no question. Very, very slow sink, basically suspending, modified Game Changer that my friend Jake Hardy tied for me in a brown color. That's pretty much all I fished because it's not so much the size, the color, or anything, but they just are the perfect presentation for the place that I was pounding. Mm-hmm. And then besides that, in terms of flies, I think I threw... I had a couple fish on snake fly, on a black snake fly. But I threw a bunch of stuff. But in terms of lures, there's no question that the Sluggo, the 9-inch Sluggo for me, was the top producer. And on that night, and that one night, which again is just one night, because I can't talk about every night, but that one night, it definitely was the best thing, despite them being on what I think was probably actually spearing too, though I think there might have been shad mixed in. There was some other things going on. So definitely the Sluggo, the 9-inch 24/7 was another thing. And then again, probably because I'm just throwing it because it's fun and it's new, the Z-Man Mullitron again this month was fun. It's just fun. You know, McKenna, Steve McKenna sent me a text. He's a big fan of the Mullitron now too. And I texted him back. I'm like, yeah, it's a great plug, but it's a fun one to fish for some reason. And I think he agreed with me. It's fun. It's like a fun plug. And that fun is catching. Like that's, I want to make that very clear. I don't fish a plug because it's fun. I fish it because it works. But there are some plugs that are fun. Like that Tidal Pro. That's another fun plug to fish. You know.
Yeah. And there are some plugs that are productive that aren't fun to fish at times.
Yeah, aka the bucktail. Don't send me hate mail. Stop sending me hate mail. I said it. I went there, Toby. I'll take the hate mail. I said it. That's funny. So, Toby, that's what I got for lessons in the log. Yeah. And I don't know if you've got anything else, but again, disappointed. But I think next year, going into October, I'm going to have a different. I'm now convinced I need to have a different mindset and a different perspective and expectation, I think, going forward.
Yeah, and we've got, obviously for us in southern New England, another month of fishing. It sort of starts to taper off. Yeah, because when we're talking out front, open water, big fish potential, etc., we've got realistically, again, maybe with the bait and the warm water I saw, go right to the end of this month, but at least another week or two-ish. Before we come at y'all with the final, monthly lessons log, and I have some plans for it right now. I will say that much, that there's a couple things I intend to try in the next couple of outings that I'll bring those up once we come back around in a couple weeks.
A little teaser for the next edition of the Lessons from the Log. This has been a weekly edition of the Surfcast Podcast. You can find out more about the podcast at surfcastpodcast.com, or definitely check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, at the Surfcast Podcast.